What's happening, guys? This is Logan Robinson from NoleGameday.com. We're here live on a wonderful, fantastic Monday afternoon. Mike Norvell just wrapped up his press conference in preparation between Florida State and Miami on a primetime Saturday night slot. We'll get some thoughts on what he had to say. He also gave some injury updates as well. We have some depth chart changes as too that we'll go through on this episode. We're going to give our last thoughts on this Florida State and Virginia game, some concerns, maybe some positives we can take away, but some things that Florida State certainly have to fix, and going into a massive, massive game against a really physical and well-coached Miami Hurricanes team on Saturday. Also, too, we'll discuss the new and latest AP poll. With me this afternoon is Dustin Lewis, our editor-in-chief at NoleGameday.com. D-Lou, it was the first loss of the season for Florida State on a weird and wild Friday night. We've had a couple days to go look back at a few things, some film. We've heard from Tony White, which we'll also discuss, and Gus Malzahn. How are you feeling, and where you think this team is at moving forward?
Yeah, that one did not go how I was anticipating on Friday night. It was certainly a lot more wild and wackier than I foresaw going into that game. And, we saw how it went back and forth, double overtime, Florida State. Unfortunately, not able to come out on top. But, you got to respond quickly here. No time to sit back and lick your wounds. You've got an undefeated number 3 Miami Hurricanes team coming to town on Saturday night. Prime time in Tallahassee, going to be the first night game in Doak. And, we've seen how good this team has played at home those first 3 games of the season. Obviously, that win against Alabama. And, there's some hope that Florida State will be able to respond quickly here, get back on track, and we'll have a pretty competitive game here in Tallahassee in a couple days.
That's what you got to hope for. And like you said, you can go back to that week 1 game against Bama and say, hey, this team can show that they will play with more physicality, more dominance, and understand where they need to be at on the field, assignment-wise, holding each other accountable. Also, to good coaching adjustments. It's not just on the players, too. I think there was some lack of that on the coaching staff as well. Tony White also, called himself out on that as well in his press conference this week. But looking back at, Virginia, Florida State loses this in that in the overtime, like 46-38. When you look at the points here that Virginia was able to put up, you knew that you had an experienced quarterback. You had some good experience all across the board on that team, and well-disciplined coaching from Tony Elliott as well. But, it's immediately goes to that defensive side of the ball that just lacked a lot of what you saw in the first 3 weeks of the season. I know you had you had 2 straight games of lesser opponent, not as much talent that you're going to have to deal with, but you go back to week 1 and what they were able to show against Alabama. Now Alabama getting a big time win over the weekend against Georgia. What to you was the biggest concern on the defensive side? I'll give mine. I kind of was giving that at the end of our live watch party after the game. But what to you, D-Lou, after a couple of days, concerns you the most on that defensive side?
Yeah, the defense in general, was pretty disappointing for Florida State. And, I just continue to point back, and talked about it some on Friday night, but the missed tackling issues really showed up in a big way for Florida State. You had a season high 15 missed tackles, according to PFF, and it wasn't limited to just one position group. It was the defensive line, linebackers, defensive backfield. You just struggled to get guys on the ground. And, there were some moments where Florida State, if they would have wrapped up or got the guy on the ground, you're talking about maybe a negative play or a short gain. And then, like Tony White said yesterday, a lot of those small plays ended up turning into 5 or 6 yard gains, and just, hit Florida State with the little ones over and over again. Because, Virginia in this game really didn't have a lot of home run plays. You had that one big passing play after Ashlyn Barker's sack. You had the big rushing touchdown from Virginia there late in the first half. But, overall, they just controlled the ball, moved it, and got first downs, and just kept that clock rolling. And, you look at 3 of the 5 touchdown drives for Virginia in regulation. They were all 12-plus play drives, 6 or more minutes. Taking time off the clock. And I don't think Virginia really did anything that special. They just really challenged Florida State. We're going to run the ball right at you, and can you stop it? And the Cavaliers believed that they could do it with success. And Florida State, they could not get them off the field to save their lives. And you look at it again, this was a Virginia offensive line that was banged up, didn't have their starting center, missing multiple other veterans up front. And, they were still just able to pound the ball down Florida State's throat. So that's something you're going to have to respond to big time, because Miami is bringing in, I mean, probably, arguably, a better offensive line than what Virginia had on Friday night, and a strong running attack of its own. So Florida State, they're going to need to get back on the practice field and figure that out this week.
I think you said it best there. I think Florida State was dominated in the trenches, and it was Florida State's defensive side of the ball off the edge is what I'm starting to become concerned about week after week after week. And I don't know what's going on with James Williams. I don't know. He was brought in from Nebraska. He was a third down defensive end guy to bring pressure to the quarterback. And they expected him, to be a starter, a 3-down defensive end, but he is just not the case for me right now. And we'll talk about the depth chart in just a minute, but he's listed there once again as a starter. I don't think you make a big time adjustment if you don't feel fulfilled with what you have behind there. But to me, I feel a little bit more security with a guy like Jaden Jones, or some of these younger, I hate to say it, but some of these younger freshmen, true freshmen, that have shown me a little bit more life there. And physicality, just there's nothing being set on the edge from James Williams on that side. And I think Florida State is trying to figure out what to do on the other side of the ball. Deontay McCray, Jason Jenkins, like, who is going to be someone that can step up on the other side? But Florida State doesn't have anybody that really, to me, scares me if I'm an offensive coordinator off the edge right now. And that's very much concerning. And that's going to hurt you in games, certainly when you play against an offense like Virginia, and you're about to do the same damn thing on Saturday night against a well-experienced quarterback, against Carson Beck and that offensive line like you were just talking about, Dustin. And two, I know Tony White gave some props there to D-Jack and such, but that was, and he did say, we got some big plays at the end there from Daryl Jackson. I need big plays from the first, second, and third quarter. That's when I need the big plays. I don't need it when it's on the last breath there and you need something to step up. This was, like you said, Dustin, an offensive line that was banged up, and you had a backup center in there. Florida State should have been able to make plays there, and they expect a ton from Daryl Jackson, and it just was no show until the very end. And I understand there's going to be some things on tape where cool, he takes on two blocks. Okay, he gets 3. We can throw out the screenshots. That's awesome. That's really cool for social media. No, I need him back there to actually make plays and disrupt things. And that just wasn't the case against a well-experienced quarterback that that Virginia had out there on offense, and it showed, and that hurt them quite a bit. And you can, the linebacker play, I think, was poor as well to me,
Yep.
Dustin. It just, your front seven was not there to do anything, and no adjustments as well at halftime. Just that's what concerns me very much going into another team like Miami this upcoming weekend.
It was bad. I will say, going back and rewatching the game, I thought Daryl Jackson was maybe a little bit better than on the initial rewatch. And I mean, his PFF grade reflected that. Virginia made it a point, like you just kind of talked about, I mean, to send double and triple teams his way, try and get him out of the fold, and then, make it so the other guys were forced to make plays. And I mean, they did not for Florida State there in the trenches, and also in the linebackers. I thought it was a poor game for Elijah Herring. He just didn't seem to have the same level of confidence and attack as he did in the first 3 games for Florida State.
Yeah, I felt like he was overthinking some things, and he put himself out of position at times,
Yep. And Stephon Thompson had some tackling issues. We saw it with Justin Cryer there as well in the running game, missing a couple tackles and then being taken advantage of in the passing game. So it was a really rough game for the linebackers, and I believe that made the defensive line look pretty rough as well. But I mean, Virginia on average had about 3 seconds to throw. And I mean, as we saw, Florida State's front seven, I mean, the defensive line and linebackers, none of them were credited with a tackle for loss or a sack in this game. And, I do agree with what you were talking about as far as a pass rushing from the edge standpoint. You're not really getting much there from James Williams. And I think that transition to becoming an every down player from a pass rushing specialist, it's been a little bit rougher than Florida State probably anticipated. And I mean, you even saw that there in the game against Alabama. He was struggling on some of those running downs, and Florida State began to use him more on passing downs there as that game continued on against the Crimson Tide. So they're going to have to figure some things out there off the edge, because you just don't have a ton of guys who are producing for you right now. You can put Jaden Jones in there. I think Jason Jenkins, is another guy that's kind of struggled coming off that offseason injury. He's not playing up to the level that you would expect if he had had a full offseason to go through with Florida State. And, we're going to see if they're going to try and get a spark this weekend, because we are seeing sophomore Amari Williams now listed over there on the defensive side of the ball, a co-backup with Deontay McCray behind Jenkins. So Amari Williams actually had 7 snaps against Virginia. We'll see if maybe he gets more of an opportunity there against Miami, because he does provide you with an athletic potential pass rusher guy, and we'll see if he can get out there.
Yep. I want to go to at least a positive here, and it feels like, at least if you're going to talk defensively, it would be Jabril Rawls. He got a lot of props from Tony White in this game, and Mike Norvell. He was someone that stepped up. You kept on seeing number 11 out there making plays all across the board. So shout out to him. They needed 10 more of number 11s out there. But man, was he a game changer for you. So sadly, he couldn't get the win at the end of the day from it. But I thought he had a really good game. And now, match that with, you got Jerry Wilson over there, who, had that up and down chance. He almost had that pick six. He almost had that huge opportunity to have that interception as well on the other side. But if we're going to have a positive here across the whole board, you look at, defensively, Jabril Rawls and the way that he played. And I think that gives you some good feel moving forward of what he can do on that defensive side of the ball in the cornerback room. Any positive outside of, Rawls, if you want to comment on him as well, Dustin?
Yeah, I'll stick with Jabril. 11 tackles, a tackle for loss, an interception in this game against Virginia. And he's been a really bright spot for Florida State through, he's only played in 3 of the first 4 games, missed that game against East Texas A&M with a little bit of an injury. But in his 3 appearances, he's been very solid for Florida State on defense. And I think you've probably got more than you anticipated out of him so far early in this 2025 campaign. Because you think back, not only what he did on Friday night, but that game against Alabama, he came out and had a pretty good outing against the Crimson Tide as well. So, he's proved himself in some of these bigger games. And, I'm sure now he's excited to build off this performance going into this game against Miami, and hoping Florida State can bounce back and get that win.
Honorable mention here, and I just saw it in the comments as well, but I wanted to bring him up, with Shaheen Brown, someone that we didn't see a whole ton of because of Ashlyn Barker, who suffered an injury. We'll have an update here later on in this show on him from Mike Norvell, but Shaheen Brown had to step in here, and I thought he played well. I thought he played with some urgency as well, something that Mike Norvell always presses on his players to play with, but he played well with physicality and just the assignments that Tony White was putting him in. He had 9 total tackles, 3 solo tackles on the night, but I thought he was playing well for what he had to do to step in for Barker, which Barker is such a big pivotal player for this team, and the way that he brings the physicality, tenacity, the way that he also too is just leadership wise and accountability and communication. That was a rough loss for them, but I thought Shy came in, and I thought that was a good, he was your number 3 in total tackles there, which, is tough to hear, because it was 1, 2, 3 before you got to a linebacker on your total tackles, going from Earl Little Jr. down to Jabril Rawls and Shaheen Brown. And I think Shy stepped up whenever he needed to. And I give an honorable mention there for, that's all I got though for the defensive side, as it should be.
He did what he needed to do. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And, I know we're kind of hit or miss on the PFF stuff, but Shaheen Brown actually a career high in PFF grading for that performance against Virginia. And, it's been kind of rough for him on and off the field the last year and a half. He's had some up and down performances, and maybe one like this will kind of help him find that spark and be a consistent contributor for Florida State in that back end moving forward into this the final 2/3 of the regular season.
It'd be great. It'd be great. You saw when he first arrived, man. D-Lou, you and I were really high on this young man, and he showed it on the field for you as well. And you would like to think, I think it's more mentally getting fully focused and dialed in. But a game like that, like you just said, Dustin, could turn some things around for him. Now, if we go offensively, I thought Tommy, for the most part, you had a freak interception there. And then, of course, you had that one at the end, but that's just, you got to take a shot. So we don't count that. But I thought Tommy did what he needed to do. This is a game player. You got to be lucky to have a quarterback there. That's exactly why, Mike Norvell and Gus Malzahn wanted to bring this guy in, because he will give you a chance. That's the thing with this quarterback. And you got to like what you saw there from Tommy. I thought there were some really good throws from him as well. I know we had the missed shot there, the William McCoy. But I thought for the most part, him and connecting with Deuce Robinson, who had a massive game as well. I I got to give it to Tommy here. He's a guy that fought and fought very hard for it. I think, too, there were some times where he kind of thought, I don't know if he's fully 100%, but on the scrambling things, it got lost contain and such, and you usually would see him go for it and try to scramble a little bit more. But whenever you're able to put up as many points as Florida State did on there, you don't blame a quarterback on that front, how that offense was able to move. But I thought the chemistry between Tommy and Deuce was just on point, like no other.
It's hard to be too concerned with how the offense performed. I think any game where you put up 38 points, you're walking away and being like, we should have won
Yeah.
that one. So the major criticism for me coming out of this loss lies on that defensive side of the ball. Offense, I mean, you're able to put up 35 points in regulation, come back from that 14-0 deficit, obviously over 500 yards once again for the third straight game. And even coming out of this defeat, Florida State still leads the country in points per game and total yards of offense per game. So, I mean, it just speaks to what this unit has done through the first four. And I know some of that's inflated with the Kent State and the East Texas A&M game, but, it was a solid outing for them. I did think Tommy, he had some off passes, obviously that one to LaWayne McCoy that you brought up, but there were a couple that just maybe the balls weren't placed quite in the right spot. And obviously you had the 3 turnovers. We heard Mike Norvell talk about that interception down on the goal line by Virginia there in the first half. And I mean, it really seemed to come down to just a great play by that defender over there. And obviously some bad luck with the fumble. That was Sawchuk's the first time that he's lost the ball since 2023 when he was back playing for Oklahoma. So, I mean, you had some bad luck there, but I mean, still able to put up well over 200 yards in the running game. I mean, moved the ball pretty efficiently for the most part. I know you want to be better than 6 out of 15 on third down, but, I think Florida State, they can continue to build off this performance they had. And, you're hoping you're not going to turn the ball over 3 times again against Miami. Coming into that one against Virginia, only 3 turnovers on the season. So, I mean, you practically doubled that on Friday night, but you've been good taking care of the ball at home, and you got to hope you can do that against the Hurricanes.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely right here. A comment from Grant on YouTube saying, shout out to Pitman, heck of a game. And you're absolutely right there. It was such a huge boost for this offense with Gus Malzahn getting Randy Pitman back after losing him for the last 2 games. He wasn't a full 100% going into even the Alabama game. So they gave him 3 weeks to fully rest going into this one. And you got to see how much of a versatility we kept on pressing that all throughout the offseason. And that showed right on hand of what Pitman gives you with a throwing touchdown, a receiving touchdown, and a rushing touchdown as well. And, what he is able to do, not only just, he doesn't really, wasn't a massive player until, he made that massive 4th down touchdown for you with that grab, which was an absolute dart and great ball there from Tommy Castellanos. Shout out to him on that ball and Randy Pitman making that grab. But he does a lot of things outside and does the dirty work for you. So I think Gus Malzahn was giving him a lot of good rewards when you get to goal line, because he can do a lot of different things for you, but he was able to give up 3 scores for you offensively. But yeah, shout out to Randy Pitman for a really damn good game.
If only he could have gotten 3 more yards for sleeper.
I know, right? Our sleeper
3 more
pick.
yards.
Yep, our sleeper pick. Well, we need him at 19, I believe. 18.
Yeah, I think it was 18
more.
and a half, so you needed 19, and he got 16.
Yeah, I thought that touchdown grab, man. I thought that was going to do it there. I was celebrating it. But you know what? I mean, that man was an absolute animal in this game. And yeah, like you said earlier, Dustin, we don't blame this on, the offense. There were some cruddy things in the first quarter that they got to clean up. Gus Malzahn spoke about that yesterday and was very clear that there are some things that you've got to learn on, including Deuce Robinson there, who had an incredible game, 147 yards on the night. But, he wants to have that one back there where you secure that ball earlier, and there's no way, shape, or form where anybody can review that and think on it and take that touchdown away from you. And I think this offense, just hearing from Tommy Castellanos too, what were your thoughts on his presser after the game as well? Because I thought it was pretty straightforward and pretty transparent. And also too, one thing that he's done since arriving is send a message to the team. He's been doing that since he's arrived. And I think that was a clear message publicly to his team that, probably a lot of them were in their heads and might have been maybe not overlooking into the Miami game, but feeling a little bit overconfident after your last 3 games where Florida State really hasn't had to face adversity.
Yeah, one thing I will say for sure is he didn't seem down, after that loss. Coming out of it, certainly feels like this is something that Florida State can build off of and, be a better team because of this defeat. And I mean, that kind of seemed like the main message from Tommy. And you kind of spoke about it a little bit. He said, I don't have the exact quote in front of me, Logan, you might have it, but said the guys were maybe feeling themselves a little bit too much going into this game. And, this is the type of attitude adjustment I think that can get Florida State back to that mentality that they had coming into that season opener against Alabama, where everybody's writing this team off coming off a 2-10 season. You've got a lot of motivation to go and prove people wrong. And you do have that desperation, that edge. And, it was something that we kind of thought about after these first 3 games for Florida State, going out there and beating Alabama by 14 points. Then you have those 2 games where I mean, you're playing against teams who are not evenly matched against you, and you did what you were supposed to do. You smoked East Texas A&M, smoked Kent State, and you're 3-0, suddenly number 10 in the country after coming off that 2-10 season. Everyone's patting you on the back, everyone's saying good things. Can you keep that same focus and that same mentality? And I mean, Florida State certainly, especially defensively, did not have that on Friday night, and now you got to wonder, being knocked down, are they going to be able to get back to what they had a couple weeks ago? And Tommy seems to think that they can, and this is going to be a big week for them because they do have another opponent, and they're going to have to come out desperate against Miami to have a chance.
100%. So now, moving forward from that game, we'll jump into the latest AP poll over here. And this is what we've got with Florida State dropping 10 spots over there. D-Lou, is that much of a shock to you as much? I don't think it's as much. I thought maybe it'd be in that 15 to 18 range. So being at the back of that, stands out to me. But Florida State here at 18, Miami drops just 1 spot after their bye week to number 3. Oregon having their big game and that big win on the road in a hostile environment against Penn State. They move up to number 2. But here's Florida State at 18. And to me, what probably I'm thinking is in these AP voters' minds, after they've been getting exposed the first couple of weeks since this thing's been getting released, they're finding these Twitter's ats and everything. They're coming after you and blasting you. It's probably defense. I mean, they're extremely worried and concerned that probably this, Florida State's defense has, major issues there, and to get dropped that heavily like that. What do you say on this ranking for the Noles?
I kind of looked into it a little bit because I was like, man, a 10-spot drop feels maybe a little bit steep. But you look into it, and Alabama, coming into that season opener, they were number 8 going into that game against Florida State. Obviously, lose 31-17 to an unranked FSU first game after a 2-10 season. And Alabama actually fell 13 spots all the way back to number 21 and have now started to climb themselves back up there. But, Florida State on the road, lost to an unranked team, double overtime Friday night, 10 spots probably feels about right. And, now you have an opportunity. I mean, going against number 3 Miami, if Florida State is able to pull off a victory this weekend, you're going to be jumping yourselves slowly back up there. Probably not all the way. Well, I mean, maybe all the way to 10. We'll see how the weekend goes, but I would imagine Florida State, they'll get a decent bump if they are able to upset the Hurricanes at Tallahassee.
Yep. Just got to take care of business. You could say, hey, you take the loss to Virginia, but you do beat your rival, and they are ranked number 3 in the country. You kind of are able to move on quicker and say, okay, well, that happened. We learned from it, and you prove yourself that you are a top 10 team in the country, and you solidify yourself in that way. And it seems like from these coordinators, they feel like they still are. We heard from Mike Norvell in the presser earlier today. He mentioned a few injuries, D-Lou. Ashton Barker and Roydell Williams are questionable going into this game. We did see Roydell on here along with Ashton Barker on the depth chart, but he did say both of those guys are going to be questionable. We've seen a lot of success from Florida State's running game and the running back room, and they feel very confident in what they have there. So just adding Roydell Williams would be nice, but Ashton Barker, I think, is the big one here to keep a close eye on going into this game, just going off the factor of what he does for you all across the board on the defensive side of the ball, like we were mentioning earlier, D-Lou.
Yeah, I mean the Ashland Barker one is the one that's really standing out to me and what I'll be watching during the week because he's been a really big piece for you back there at safety and another guy who I think you've gotten a lot more out of than maybe fans anticipated coming into this 2025 season. And, obviously that hustle, that energy, the physicality stood out against Alabama. And I mean, same thing on Friday night. He was a guy who made some effort plays for you. Obviously, credited with 2 sacks, 2 tackles for loss. Your only 2 sacks, half your tackles for loss in that defeat to Virginia. I mean, so he was flying around once again. You're going to need that guy back there, along with Earl Little Jr. and some of those other guys, Edwin Joseph, to make some plays against a Miami team that loves to throw the ball down the field. So he'll be pivotal there, and also in the running game. And over at looking at Roy Dell and the running backs, Florida State, they haven't really missed a beat since Williams went down with that injury against Alabama. Obviously, Gavin Sawchuk taking on a big role for the Seminoles, getting to see more of Chroma every week. And Samuel Singleton, I mean, has made some nice plays there. And then you have had Holmes and Lucas sprinkled in as well. So it'll kind of be interesting to see what Florida State does as far as touches with Williams getting back into the fold. Because honestly, I thought, looking at Holmes and what Jalen Lucas and what they did in small spurts on Friday night, I thought maybe they should have been used more in that game against Virginia. So you've got 6 guys, and it's going to be interesting to see how Florida State really decides to utilize them, because I feel like all 6 of them are talented enough to get out there and contribute on this offense.
Yeah, now that running back room is absolutely loaded. And Gavin Sawchuk, outside of that fumble, man, I mean, he had been very, very impressive for you, and he had responded as well. And Keziah Holmes, too, I thought was pretty nice. And you know what you're getting from Usman Kroma, who is just very, very, very hard to take down. And it's really been impressive as a true freshman to come in and play that way that he has. And it doesn't look like things are crazy to him and then stand out to you. Also, too, we didn't get an update on Cam Davis as well. Still trying to figure out and understand what he's dealing with there. Maybe we'll get an update later on in the week. Completely forgot about that going into this presser after that game that Florida State had against Virginia. But yeah, the running back room, I don't think that's a major concern, but Ashland Barker is one of your most essential players on this roster. And so that's going to be something we're highly monitoring in the game. But it was good to see Shaheen Brown step up to the plate and play well. So we'll see what happens later on. We'll get some updates there. Of course, we'll get some injury reports from Florida State themselves as well. And 2, we're going to keep a close eye on Javon Boggs, who I believe dressed out. He dressed out for that game against Virginia, but I did not see him out there on the field, D-Lou, unless I missed him. I did not see 15 out there.
No, you're right. Boggs dressed out and warmed up. Kevin Wynn did as well. And then neither player ended up entering that game against Virginia. But I do think, it's a good sign that they were at least able to warm up and give it a go, and probably means that they'll both be able to play this weekend against Miami.
Yeah, with that defensive line and not having much of a presence there against Virginia, would have loved to see 55 get in there. But, maybe he's just not fully ready for that. And maybe that debut is going to come against Miami. But another one to monitor, though, is Javon Boggs, who the staff feels very, very highly on, and is one of your starting wide receivers on the depth chart. Of course, too, here, looking at the defensive end, no major changes, at least in your starting unit for the most part. You do have Amari Williams getting in there with Deontay McCray or Amari Williams, which he's a 2-way player offensively and defensively for you. And I do wonder if they try to implement him a little bit more going into this game. Now, I don't think, we see James Williams on there, and I have my concerns there with him, but I don't think they're going to make a public depth chart graphic and change it all up for you just to give it away to Miami over there. That makes zero sense whatsoever. But yeah, you still get, you got James Williams out there as your starting defensive end. You got Jaden Jones and Daryl DeSer. But like you and I were talking about earlier, Dustin, I wouldn't be shocked, though, if things kind of change a little bit like you saw against Alabama, where you alter who's out there in your first and second down. And if you have a third down, 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6, or 3rd and long, you want to get James Williams out there to get after the quarterback when you know that they're going to go with Carson Beck on a passing down.
Yep. And I think same thing with Amari Williams. When you're looking at his usage on the defensive side of the ball, it's probably primarily going to be in those passing situations to try and give Florida State a little bit of juice. And, you're at the point where you can really begin to shift his focus over to defense more, especially with Randy Pitman Jr. Back in the fold at tight end on offense. Same thing with Landon Thomas, getting healthier after some injuries in the offseason and preseason. And, I think when you're looking at Amari Williams and where he would be more useful to the Seminoles right now, in my opinion, it's on defense. Because, you're just not really getting a lot of burst, a lot of consistency from these defensive ends, especially in passing downs. Like, you're going to have to put a lot more pressure on Miami and Carson Beck on Saturday night. And looking forward into the rest of the year and the rest of the schedule that Florida State has to play, you've got to generate more of a pass rush. And I think Amari Williams is someone that can help you do that. But it's certainly going to be important to start making that investment now. The more playing time, the more experience he gets, the better he is going to be for Florida State. So you start doing that now, and you look forward 4, 5, 6 games. This guy's just going to be getting better and better.
Mm-hmm. We practically just talked on it there, but our guy Zeno on YouTube asking, does the unchanged depth chart for edge speak more of the lack of depth or some NIL, seniority, etc. factor? And like I was just mentioning there, it's Miami week, and I don't think you see a big adjustment being made on a public graphic for you and such. I think that stays internally, and they can put this depth chart out and they can completely reshuffle everything in front of your face whenever they hit the field on Saturday night. But there's also some things. I don't think seniority, like that was one thing that had to change with Mike Norvell going into this season, that you can't have players going in there no matter how long they've been with you, how long they've been starting, or whatever. And if they underperform, then you get to see them out there again and again and again. That had to change, and bringing in 2 new coordinators as well will make that happen. We saw that as well with Tony White picking different personnel going into this upcoming season. We saw that with like Shaheen Brown for one of those examples there in the safety room. So, I think that's not the case here, and we'll see whatever Florida State rolls out there. This is just a depth chart, and as we get further into the season as well, it won't be too much of any kind of anything, to be honest with you, outside of seeing guys like Amari Williams jump in here and maybe some shuffling with that, like Daniel Lyons and Mandrell Desir in there as well. But yeah, that's my kind of take on that one, on that question.
You kind of nailed it on the head, honestly. You think back to last year, that 2-10 season, you weren't really seeing any changes. It was just kind of the definition of insanity at that point, doing the same thing over and over again. And I will say, so far this season, we have seen Florida State make some changes. The Desir twins, they weren't on this depth chart when the season began. Now you've got Darryl there as a co-backup in one of the defensive end spots. You've got Mandrell, who could potentially make the first start of his career on Saturday night against Miami. Obviously, Amari Williams now getting listed over here, but Omar Graham Jr. and Stephon Thompson, they weren't co-starters when the season began. And, Edwin Joseph didn't have that primary starting spot at safety when the season began. So there have been some changes here. I think, it ultimately just depends on the personnel and what you do have available. I don't think that Florida State is necessarily crazy deep at the edge on defense. You've got James Williams, you've got Jaden Jones, who has been here for a while, a guy who's dealt with some injuries and thankfully is healthy this go round for Florida State. And then you've got your true freshman and Darryl Desir. And then the other side, obviously Jenkins coming off that injury. I think Deontay McCray has probably arguably been your most solid defensive lineman so far through these first 4 games for Florida State. And then, Amari Williams there as a co-backup at defensive end as well. So, we'll see if the Seminoles are just able to continue to improve and use these guys in the right situations, and maybe that'll help them shine more.
That's the thing. That was one thing we were highlighting going into the season. You're pretty limited there at the edge position, D-Lou, going into the season. And that's why you were having to put a lot of the pressure on James Williams to be someone to be a game changer for you, or at least give you a good amount of production for you. And then the Jason Jenkins injury really hurt Florida State over the offseason. He's still trying to get to probably, a full 100% there. But now you've had a few games as well. And, if you're going to trot him out there and he's not 100%, you got to put other guys in the position to be able to step up. And no, Florida State, no matter how well Deontay McCray might be playing and such, Florida State's got to have better production there on the edge. And it's going to show very quickly against Miami if you don't have that. But we'll have a way better full in-depth preview for you guys on Wednesday evening show as we preview Florida State, number 18 in the country versus number 3, Miami. Before we go, though, College Game Day not coming to Tallahassee. I know there was some rumors and such, man. Kirk, but here's the deal. All right, College Game Day is not coming. It is what it is. They're going to they're going to the Vanderbilt game, Tuscaloosa.
Yep.
For that and Alabama. So we were talking about that as well. Well, what about if Alabama, goes over there and beats Georgia? Well, it wouldn't be shocking, even if it was going to be hard for them not go to Tallahassee if Florida State stayed undefeated. For that, Miami they were almost going to have to just be forced to have to go. But here's the deal: Kirk Herbstreit's still going to be in Tallahassee, as you found out just a little bit ago. D-Lou, tell us what's going on there. We will still have Kirk in Doak Campbell Stadium on Saturday night.
That's right. Yeah, the broadcasting crew was released for the game earlier today. Obviously, 7:30 p.m. on ABC on Saturday night, Florida State and Miami. And you actually have a special guest in attendance. And it's not just Lee Corso who's expected to be at the game. Your crew for this game, play-by-play, Chris Fowler, analyst Kirk Herbstreit, and sideline Holly Rowe. So you will have Kirk Herbstreit back in Tallahassee for the first time since the playoff snub. And I know we talked about it a little bit last week. Obviously the Florida State fans gave him hell over there in Dublin, Ireland before the beginning of that 2024 season. You're not going to get a chance before the game on Saturday, but hey, maybe turn up to that broadcasting booth and let them know how you're feeling once you're in the stands in Doak.
Yeah, who knows? But you think he's going to trot the dog out there onto the field and chop it up with Mike before the game? You think so?
That dog is attached at the hip with Kirk, so I have to imagine we'll be seeing it in Tallahassee.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness gracious. That's going to be a riled-up crowd no matter what. Even Florida State, having the loss that they did, I'm still expecting to still got a sold-out crowd coming into it. You have your Miami fans in there as well. So it is going to be a lively Doak Campbell Stadium on Saturday night. Just looking at, Arkansas got rid of their coach there, Sam Pitman. That's kind of saw that one coming. I was even thinking about it during that game like that. They got to be done with that by now. But no, I don't know about names, but one that actually I want to speak about is Shaheen Brown, who suffered a really scary leg injury going for a touchdown pass there in that Arkansas game, and very, very scary. And so hoping and wishing him the best, who was former Florida State wide receiver there, originally transferred from LSU as well, but suffered a scary injury, man. Just hate to see that, man. Awful.
That was rough. Yeah, lower body injury, had to be carted off the field. And, looks like he went to the hospital and had to have a procedure. Saw him post on Instagram, saying he's going to be back and better. So, yeah, wishing the best for Shaheen Brown coming off a tough one on Saturday. But, there are some players on Arkansas's roster Florida State could take a look at. I think the most obvious one that pops into my brain immediately is true freshman linebacker Tavian Wallace, who was a member of that 2025 class, someone who Florida State was recruiting pretty hard out of the state of Georgia. And, it seemed like they were in contention to win his commitment last summer. And then he kind of surprised everybody choosing Arkansas over FSU, Georgia, and offers from a bunch of the other top schools in the country. And, Wallace ultimately stuck with that commitment, signed with Arkansas during the early signing period, going through his first season there with the Razorbacks. But, you do have to wonder, Sam Pitman being fired. Now you have the 30-day transfer portal window opening up for these Arkansas players, and Florida State, they certainly could always use more talent at that linebacker position. They've got a previous relationship here. So I am wondering if this is a guy maybe they get in contact with.
Absolutely. Could use him. That's something Florida State would like to be able to always improve, is at the second level. Grant Wilkins also too here on YouTube is Holmes 100%. He missed week before, had two nice runs, and then disappeared. I believe Gus was asked this during his presser on Sunday as I was just listening to it, and just said, had the runs, but like the other personnel that they were having out there for that situation. I mean, it's mainly coach speak, so not going to get a full transparent kind of answer on that one, but felt like there was better personnel out there for Florida State's running back room. And then there's another question, Kyle, here on Facebook. Was Sawchuk hurt? Felt like Croma was getting overutilized and short yardage. See, the deal here is, to me, and Florida State did use Croma and that overtime. You know, we were all watching it here, and we're like, okay, well, Florida State's going with the true freshman at running back here. I think it was just off the factor that he was the most physical guy there in your backfield for you. I mean, I understand, you know, Sawchuk was able to respond after his fumble, and he is also to another physical running back as well. But I think Usman Croma has just continued to show this staff week by week that he is a little bit more physical. I've also kind of just been wondering why we don't see Croma earlier in games as well. I think we're starting to see that tiny bit more, but you know, there's some limitations to him against Kent State, and I, you know, had some wonder why we didn't see him a little bit earlier against Virginia, but I think that's just the case there. He's a very physical back, and as we all know, he's very, very hard to take down, and to me, he's reading things earlier than what Cam Davis did last year as a true freshman.
I will say regarding Keziah, you know, he had those back-to-back 16-yard runs like y'all were talking about against Virginia, and then we never saw him again the rest of that game. Coming into that game, you know, Florida State was releasing those ACC ability reports, and Holmes on the first two reports, he was listed as probable for FSU, and, you know, appeared to suffer an injury early on in that Kent State game not Kent State, the East Texas A&M game, where he had to exit pretty early on. We didn't see him play against Kent State. So, yeah, it's very possible that he was not fully healthy coming into this one. And then, you know, I kind of agree with your point on the Croma and Sawchuk usage there. You know, Sawchuk was just a little bit more physical, and he was being a little bit more efficient on his runs against Virginia. You know, you look at Sawchuk average of 4.4 yards a carry against Virginia. Croma had a 5.3 yards per carry, and he also had the longest run on the team, that 23-yard burst there that helped lead to one of Florida State's touchdown drives. So it was an important and an impressive performance. I'm getting my words caught up here from the true freshman. And, you know, with Roydell getting back into the fold, that's kind of the thing I'm watching this weekend. You know, what's the usage going to be like between Roydell Williams, Sawchuk, and Croma? Because those have obviously been three guys getting the most carries so far.
It will be. And I'd like to see 28 out there a little bit more as well with Singleton. I feel like he's a really impressive guy that he's kind of limited, and I would like to see some more opportunities for him as well in that backfield. It's just such a loaded unit all across the board, but I think we're starting to figure out who your top three guys are, and I would like to see 28 and they're a little bit more. But I think that's going to do it for this episode here, unless you have anything else, D-Lou, on your end that you want to mention.
Well, you got to put me on the spot.
I don't know. I don't know if there's anything on here.
We got the I don't know if it matters for this week, but maybe for next week, we got the Florida State Pittsburgh kickoff time.
Ooh, there we go.
For Saturday, October 11th. Going to be a nooner in Tallahassee on ESPN. Nationally televised game between the Seminoles and the Panthers. Just make sure to get some sleep on Friday night.
Yeah, don't try to go too crazy hard in College Town for that game. Here's some breaking news here. Paul Feinbaum is considering leaving ESPN to run as the Republican candidate for Tommy Tuberville's open U.S. Senate seat in Alabama. He tells Outkick. There you have it. Okay. Interesting there. Won't go further into why he's considering that, because it's political stuff and we're here for sports. But I'm just more of in shock that he would leave ESPN, and I think everybody would be in full celebration mode. At least the FSU fan base would be.
Feinbaum versus Bruce Pearl on the ballot.
What a time to be alive, man. We got entertainers turn into politicians. Well, we've had that for a while now anyways. But do you think Lucas should be more involved, got the speed? I think they're trying to figure out, how to do that also too with a guy like Mekhi Danzy. He's got more long length of his strides. So he's a speedy guy. Then you got a whole different 180 with Jalen Lucas, smaller dude and gadgety and fast and quick and shifty and twitchy. But I think Gus Malzahn, like he said earlier on Sunday, he's trying to figure out this they're still trying to figure out the offense. And trying to see who's going to step up and utilize and some schemes and game schemes. Like things are going to change week to week, just depending on what opponent you're facing defensively. So, Jalen Lucas caught the ball in punt return. That was good. We like that.
Did he return punts?
Squirrel
return punts.
Squirrel returned the punts. That's right. But Grant said, save the jet fuel with those ears. Elliot Feinblum.
I think that's for Paul.
Oh, yeah, that is. All right. Well, I think that is going to do it for this week's episode, or not this week's episode. We'll actually see you on Wednesday as well as we preview Florida State versus Miami. As always, you can listen to this podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify. If you're on YouTube right now, hit that like button. Also, too, if you haven't yet, hit the subscribe button. We deeply appreciate it. And we will talk to you guys on Wednesday night at 7 o'clock. Florida State versus Miami preview for you guys and score predictions. Y'all enjoy the rest of y'all's week. Peace.